Hello and welcome to the Carl Jackson Show, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. We've got a lot to get to today. A Gallup poll that, if true, could prove damaging, actually outright disastrous for the Kamala Harris campaign. Also, a Joe Biden gaffe will do the same. Another assassination attempt looming for President Trump, a third assassination attempt. Also, Iran threatening to assassinate Trump. I'm going to have a different take on this than I believe most of media will have, but we're going to go over a lot of this week's major headlines and discuss them today in the show, including Joe Biden's speech at the UN and him bragging about the Afghanistan withdrawal. I'm going to tie a lot of these situations in together, a lot of these headlines in together. Kamala Harris gives another disastrous interview, in my opinion, and I'm not even sure that it's worth talking about because she said absolutely nothing. And she's also going to she's also going to go to the border. But it's a little bit too late, especially now that we know that what they're doing is flying illegals over the border and into our country. She's also going to Arizona, where there is more fencing. She's not going to the Rio Grande yet again. But let me start here. Let me start with what I perceive to be is a damaging poll for Kamala Harris's campaign if it proves to be true. Now, I say this as a person that is, listen, I believe that we can't rest on our laurels no matter what the polls say. The polls look wonderful in 2022 for conservatives and for the Republican Party, and they turned out to be wrong for whatever reason. A lot of people seem to show up to vote, but for whatever reason, the people that we needed to show up in the places that we needed to win didn't show up in large enough numbers. And hopefully that will change this election, this November election day. But there was a Gallup poll that came out earlier this week, and it says it was titled 2024 Election Environment Favorable to GOP Party Affiliation. GOP issue advantages, economic pessimism among key factors. And I'm going to go through this poll thoroughly. I don't believe anyone else has done that. And I think this is very important because I do believe that this could spell night for the Kamala Harris campaign. Basically, this race is Donald Trump's race to lose. Donald Trump in the last a couple of weeks or so has seemingly become extremely focused on the issues that matter to most voters, and that is the economy, that is inflation, that is the immigration, that is big government spending that is leading and causing much of the inflation, actually all of the inflation for the most part. So anyway, we will talk about that. All right, so let me get into this poll, but before I do, I want to play a couple of videos for you. First off, there's two things that happened earlier this week that I believe could prove to be a disaster for the Kamala Harris campaign. Again, this poll, if it proves to be correct, and we'll go through and outline the points, and also an interview, a seemingly harmless interview, one might think, with Joe Biden on the television show The View. He said something that I think could be devastating to the Kamala Harris campaign because it's something that she's been trying to avoid all along. Gabe, let's go ahead and roll that video, por favor. That is video clip number 6.
And as vice president, there wasn't a single thing that I did that she couldn't do. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to delegate her responsibility on everything from foreign policy to domestic policy.
Okay, so that was Joe Biden saying that he and Kamala Harris were tied at the hip. And as a matter of fact, he delegated some of his responsibilities to Kamala Harris. So they're one and the same. Kamala Harris is Joe Biden. Joe Biden is Kamala Harris as far as policies are concerned. The only thing is, I think Kamala Harris is worse because I believe she is an actual leftist where Joe Biden was placating to the left. But I think that's damning for the Kamala Harris campaign, and Trump should use it in an ad. If I'm not mistaken, I've already seen it on True Social and also on Trump's X account, but this needs to be an ad. Kamala Harris is trying her best to run away from Donald Trump, and this is damning. She will not be able to do it. Donald Trump has been doing a much better job in the last, beyond more than a week of tying Kamala Harris to Biden's policies, tying Kamala Harris to the issues that matter to the American voter and how she's a part of the pain that Americans are feeling right now. Now, let me get into this poll because on so many issues, voters are favoring the GOP. And this is huge for the GOP. Let's get to the first issue. party identification and leaning. All right. So that is the first subtopic. Oh, you know what? Before I get to this, I'm sorry. Guys, I apologize. I've got to show another video. This is something else that happened earlier in the week. I'm going to tie them together. Forgive me for that little slip up. Let's go to Cardinal Dolan. This is video clip number 6. I know you guys have seen this video, but I want to make sure that I play it for you for number 8. For those of you that have, for those of you that might have missed it, I'm going to tie this in together. So this is damning. Okay. So the View, Joe Biden on the View, admitting that he delegated some of his responsibilities on both foreign and domestic policy to Kamala Harris. In other words, Kamala Harris is Joe Biden. Joe Biden is Kamala Harris. You're not going to get anything different except someone that is even more to the left than Joe Biden. So perhaps she will push issues or try to even further to the left. But this is something else. This is something else that I think could prove to be damning for the Kamala Harris campaign. Before we get into the Gallup poll, and I apologize for the mix-up, but this is Cardinal Dolan talking about the Al Smith dinner. Kamala Harris intends to skip the Al Smith dinner, and I want you to hear what Cardinal Dolan had to say about it. I'm sure many of you have seen this video. Again, I'll tie it in. Video clip number 8, por favor, Gabe.
We're disappointed. We were looking forward to giving the vice president an enthusiastic welcome. And we were confident that she would find this. You know, she speaks very much about the high ideals and how it's good to get away from division and come together in unity and all. Well, that's what the Al Smith dinner is all about. We haven't given up yet. We're not used to this. We don't know how to handle it. This hasn't happened in 40 years since Walter Mondale turned down the invitation. And remember, he lost 49 out of 50 states. I don't want to say there's a direct connection there. But so we're not used to this, and we're not giving up. You know who's been a help to us, Lauren, is Senator Schumer and Governor Hochul. They both are working hard to see that they convince her to come.
So there's still a chance.
Yeah, and Senator Schumer said to me, he said, I don't think she made the decision. I think her schedulers are saying she can't make it. So we're not giving up. We hope she's there.
Okay, so he throws shade and then he gives her a little bit of grace. This was very smooth by Cardinal Dolan. Let me tell you why Kamala Harris cannot go and likely will not go to the Al Smith dinner. For one, you have to remember they're Catholic. She's decidedly a pro-abortion candidate. This is someone that supports late-term abortion. She's on video saying as much, despite what she said in the debate with Donald Trump, the ABC debate that was totally rigged. Also, she's simply not funny. All right. And I don't think she can pull it off. And we know that she cannot take a joke. I mean, we've seen her in different interviews. We've seen her in the debate with Mike Pence. I'm talking. Kamala Harris cannot take a joke. And I don't think it would bode well for her because you have to remember something. Kamala Harris is not doing great with men at all. And she's actually not doing as great as they expected with women as well. But she is catering to women, especially on the abortion issue. So that brings me to another point. She doesn't want to upset her base. So she's not funny. She can't take a joke. She's decidedly pro-abortion. She can't upset her base, and she can't afford another disastrous performance after that debate. After the Oprah Winfrey debacle, that interview was a total debacle. And by the way, Kamala Harris is divisive. So this is why she does not want to go on attend the Al Smith dinner, and I doubt that she will. Now, let me get back to this Gallup poll, and we'll get started, at least with a minute and a half we have remaining in this block. This is very important. This is where Kamala Harris also finds herself in danger. Party identification and leaning. Listen to this. This is one of many. More U.S. adults are identifying as Republicans or say they lean toward the Republican Party. 48% say they identify as or lean Republican, as opposed to 45% of voters out there that currently say they are leaning Democrat. That does not bode well for Kamala Harris. The average of Gallup polls taken during the third quarter, July through September, is when these particular polls were taken. The vast majority of voters identified as leaning for their preferred party being the Republican Party at this point. At the aggregate level, there are typically more Democrats and Democrat leaners than Republicans and Republican leaners in the U.S. The U.S. adult population, according to Gallup. But Democrats have won presidential elections in years in which they had larger than normal advantages in party affiliation. These years included 1992, 1996, 2008, 2012, and 2020. That number doesn't exist anymore. Now, voters are leaning towards the Republican Party. And if voters are leaning towards the Republican Party, this obviously does not bode well for Kamala Harris. In years when the advantage was narrower, that was in 2004 and 2016, according to Gallup, Republicans won in the Electoral College, if not the popular vote altogether. So 2004 obviously was George W. Bush, and 2016 that was Donald Trump. This is not good news for Kamala Harris. We'll be back with more on the other side. This is the Carl Jackson Show. Hey, Carl Jackson here for MyPillow. Well, you've asked and MyPillow has listened. They're finally bringing you the most requested offer ever. So right now you can get the queen size premium MyPillow for as little as $19.98. MyPillow is made with a patented adjustable feel. It adjusts to your exact individual needs regardless of your sleep position. It helps keep your neck aligned and holds its shape all night long so you get the best sleep of your life. But that's not all. You can get their 6-piece kitchen or bath towel sets for as low as $25, the brand new mattress topper for as low as $69.98, and their famous MyPillow bed sheets for as low as $25, and so much more. All you have to do is go to MyPillow.com or call 800-858-0263. Use the promo code CARL, C-A-R-L. I don't spell it like the communist, to get huge discounts on all MyPillow products, including the premium queen size MyPillow that's only $19.98. That's the lowest price ever. Don't delay. Order today. Use promo code CARL at checkout. All right, so hello and welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show. Don't forget to subscribe to my podcast wherever you go to get your podcast: Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, The Carl Jackson Show, wherever you go to get your podcast. Also, please find me on all things social media at The Carl Jackson Show, X, Instagram, Facebook, mostly where I post, but I'm also on Truth Social and Getter as well. So I talked to you about the party identification and leaning. Right now, more voters are leaning that have been polled with Gallup are leaning towards Republican, 48% to Democrats, 45%. This does not bode well for the Democrat Party because, again, Democrats have won presidential elections in which they had larger than normal advantages in party affiliation. Again, those years, 92 and 96, 2008, 2012, and 2020, but they did not bode well in 2004 and 2016 when Republicans won the Electoral College and the voters favored them or leaned closer towards Republicans. So that does not bode well for Kamala Harris. And again, Joe Biden admitted on The View that Kamala Harris was tied to his hip, that in fact she was involved in foreign and domestic policy. So it's going to be very hard to run away from that. Run away from the Biden-Harris administration, with Trump being extremely focused like a laser beam right now. Also, Cardinal Dolan, as we mentioned in the first block, called Kamala Harris out. She's not going to the Al Smith dinner. I think this could be a huge mistake for her because, again, she's placating or she's acquiescing to her radical base rather than the people that are going to decide the election. So Kamala Harris just simply is a bad candidate. Now, on party performance issues, there's 3 separate measures of party performance, according to Gallup, on issues that favor the Republican Party by at least a modest margin. All right. So by 46 to 41%, Americans are saying that the Republican Party is better able than the Democratic Party to address what they think are the most important issues facing the country. So the top issues Americans are currently concerned about are obviously the economy, 24%, immigration, 22%, the government, 17%. And I believe that means government largesse. And then inflation is at 15%. All right. So according to Gallup, this measure has been predictive of election outcomes and Gallup trends dating all the way back to 1948. The party rated as better at handling the most important problem has won all but 3 presidential elections since that year. And so it isn't just the economy that that Republicans are winning on, at least in the polling right now. But again, it's on the issue of immigration. It's on the issue of government. It's on the issue of inflation. Voters believe that Republicans will handle this better. All right. So that question apparently was not asked in 2000. And the two parties tied in 1980 when inflation was a top issue. The only time the measure was out of sync with the outcome was way back in 1948 when Americans believed the Republican Party was better able to handle the most important problem, which were international issues, but returned the Democratic incumbent Harry Truman to office regardless. So that was an outlier in 1948. Also, when it comes to economic and international matters, Gallup tracked the perception of voters who could best handle the economic and international matters broadly. And when it came to that, Americans currently give the Republican Party a 6-point edge, 50 to 44%, as the party they think would do a better job of keeping the country prosperous. All right, this is very important. This is why it's so important for Donald Trump to stay focused like a laser beam on the economy, on inflation, on government largesse, on inflation, those issues that are obviously impacting people's pocketbooks, crime, migrant crime that's occurring, and also a shortage of homes, resources with illegal aliens coming into the country. It's absolutely astonishing. It's absolutely astonishing. So these are some measures that could be devastating, that I believe will be devastating for Kamala Harris's campaign. So again, Republicans hold a 6-point edge on these issues, 50 to 44%, at least on this issue of economic and international matters. Gallup has asked this question apparently since 1951 in 16 presidential elections since. Then, when one party has had at least a minimal advantage on this measure, that party has won 12 out of 16 times. So the Republicans are leading on that measure. On the third measure, so you have party identification and leaning. Republicans are leading on party performance on issues, including the economy, immigration, the government, inflation, and also economic and international matters. Republicans are leading there. Number 3, economic confidence. Gallup's economic confidence index is currently at negative 28, indicating Americans' attitudes about the economy are negative on balance. The rating is derived from 22% of Americans describing current economic conditions as excellent or good, versus 48% saying they are poor, and 32% believing the economy is quote unquote getting better, versus the 62% saying it is getting worse. So that does not bode well for Kamala Harris. And with Joe Biden appearing on The View and saying, I am Kamala Harris is me, that could prove devastating for the Kamala Harris campaign, again, as long as the Trump administration or the Trump campaign stays focused on the issues that Americans care most about. Remember, Trump he's got the base. Kamala, for the most part, well, she doesn't necessarily have all of her base. Some of her base is defecting. I think that is a good chance that whether it's Black, Latino voters, they may stay home because they're not excited about they may not be excited about either one of the candidates, but especially Kamala Harris. But Trump seems to be taking some of those. He's gaining momentum amongst Latino voters and Black voters. And that, again, won't bode well for Kamala Harris. Also, in incumbent election years, talking about economic confidence, a negative 28 economic confidence score will be closer to what is typically been a losing strategy. We've seen it in 92. We've seen it in 2008. We've seen it in 2016. Rather than a winning strategy that we saw in 96, 2004, and 2012 for the president's party. In 2020, Americans' evaluations were essentially neutral. That's when Donald Trump lost. Wink, wink. All right. Number 4, national satisfaction. How do Republicans rate on this? These numbers usually means that the incumbent loses. What are these numbers? 22% of Americans are satisfied with the way things are going in the United States at this time. Only 22%, according to Gallup. Satisfaction levels this low have been associated with incumbent presidents losing their reelection bids in 1980, 19%. in 1992 when there was 22%, and in 2020 when these numbers were at 28%. So currently, 22% of Americans are satisfied with the way things are going. That does not bode well for Kamala Harris at all. Number 5, presidential job approval rating. Now, this one is a little different, all right, because Joe Biden's numbers have actually crept downward. He's at 39% as opposed to 48%. But remember, since he was kicked to the curb by Nancy Pelosi, George Clooney, Barack Obama, the donors and the power that be that are pulling the puppet strings and all that kind of good stuff, his numbers are down at 39%. But this is such an anomaly, right, with Biden being kicked to the curb, that I don't believe that their approval rating for the incumbent will factor in that much this year, unless Trump again effectively ties Kamala Harris to the Biden campaign. And Joe Biden has just done that for him on The View. Thank you, Joe Biden. We really appreciate that. At 39% job approval rating, Biden is well below the 48% threshold for past presidents who were reelected. The 2024 presidential nominee, obviously Donald Trump, lost the 2020 election when he had 46% job approval. Now, here's an important thing, too, something to note. Kamala Harris's job approval rating, she got a slight bump, went to 47%. She's back down to 44%. That does not bode well. In presidential election years when the incumbent was not running for re-election, the opposition party won all but in 1998. The losses occurred whether the incumbent president was popular. That was 1960, that was 2000, and that was 2016. Or when they were unpopular, 1952, 1968, and 2008. So the presidential job approval rating, again, Joe Biden is down, but Trump has to tie Kamala Harris to Joe Biden. He's focused. He's doing that now. Her numbers have dropped from 47% job approval rating to 44%. Does not bode well. Party favorable ratings. Now, this one is neck and neck. All right. So this is the only time where the Republican Party does not have favorables over the Democrat Party. All right. So this year, the numbers are basically neutral. So in September, Gallup poll finds that 43% of Americans saying they have a favorable opinion of the Republican Party, as opposed to 42% of the Democratic Party. That's basically a wash. In many presidential election years, according to Gallup, like now, the parties had similar favorable ratings. In the years in which one party had an advantage, that was 96, that was 2004, 2008, 2012, 2016. That party went on to win. All right. Number 7, preference for government activity. Americans generally have expressed a preference for a limited government role. That has certainly not been the case with the Biden-Harris administration. Guys, until next time, do not grow weary doing good. Thank you for tuning in to The Carl Jackson Show.